Hi guys, welcome back to the We Speak Facts podcast. I'm Brianna.
I'm Michelle. And today we're going to talk about ambiguous loss. We decided to just do one topic today because we feel like this is a pretty big topic. It's a heavy topic. And I feel like it affects a lot of people, and people may not know the words for it or understand it. So we wanted to really touch on this topic. I know it's something, I'm going through.
I've experienced myself.
Right. And so, and I'm sure a lot of you have. I mean, it in the way that it's so broad, it can affect so many people. So we really wanted to really talk about it and just kind of put it out there and help people, understand what they may be dealing with. Obviously, we're not professionals, but just knowing that it's something that we're dealing with. I'm someone who likes to, look up things and understand, why are we feeling what we're feeling? And so, I discovered this and I was like, this is such a good, thing to talk to about people. Wanted to kind of give you a definition of what ambiguous loss is. So ambiguous loss is a person's profound sense of loss and sadness that is not associated with the death of a loved one. It can be a loss of emotional connection when a person's physical presence remains, or when that emotional connection remains, but a physical connection is lost. And often there is not a sense of closure in ambiguous loss. So ambiguous loss can be the death of a loved one. It can be not speaking to a loved one anymore. It can
Pause. I want to apologize for the fan. We didn't know we had it on, but we hope you enjoyed the rest of the video. Thank you.
Physical, or it can be, just physiological or emotional. So it can be a loved one dying unexpectedly, and you have that feeling of, they're still around. You have that urge to still call them. It's that sense of loss, and you didn't get that closure because it was such an unexpected loss. It could be, when a child is given up for adoption, or, it could be on the mother's end that gave the child up, or the birth mother. It could be on the sense of the child. If children are taken from their parents in foster care situations, put in foster care, that can be a loss for the child. It can be losing a friend, losing a family member due to toxicity and in relationships that don't serve you anymore. It can be losing a job that you love that you didn't expect to lose. I mean, the gamut, it's very, very deep into all the things that, you can be affected by with ambiguous loss. It's generally just a loss of something that is like, you have no closure and you're just like, why, why did I lose it? Or you may know why, but it's that grieving. You feel that grief of, it's almost like a death. And so it can happen, to anyone. And so it's something that I just feel like we really, really, really should look at and talk about, I think, a little bit more. And so that's why I wanted to bring it up. So that's where we're at. But for you, do you feel like you've experienced that before?
Oh yeah, on multiple occasions. Not only with just in like familial relationships, but it could be friendship relationships. I've experienced ambiguous loss, and I would say like most recently, I feel like with the job I interviewed for that I really wanted to. I feel like I had that sense of ambiguous loss because I didn't exactly know why I didn't get hired, but I felt like they liked me enough to get hired. And it was just like that, like, I just couldn't get over the fact that I didn't get hired because I felt like my interview was so good. I feel like I can understand, now that I understand the meaning of ambiguous loss, I feel like that was my connection to that. I feel like there's no issue with ambiguous loss, but you don't understand why you're feeling that way.
Right. And I will say, to interject just for a moment, when you didn't get that job, you're right, because the way that you were so upset, it was like a grieving.
Yes.
And you just were like, what happened? I don't understand. I don't understand.
Exactly.
And so, because you had multiple interviews, it wasn't just, one, multiple interviews and, loved you. And, we're going to hire you for the third interview.
Right.
And you did the drug test. I mean, you did it all.
Right.
Obviously we ultimately ended up finding out, but why?
But then I got closure on it, and that's the
exactly.
That's the good thing about it. I did get closure on that situation.
Right.
So
but initially it was
loss.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've experienced that with not only just that situation, but within my friendships too. I went to FIU and I made that friend, and then she basically cut off our friendship for really no reason. There was really no reason why.
She did. She cut it off because she was in a relationship and her friend her person couldn't handle the fact that you guys were.
But still, it wasn't off the accord of that she didn't want to be my friend. It was off the accord of her. her. So I'm just like, why don't you want to be my friend? Acting as if you didn't. And you're kind of leading me on to be like, oh, because I remember texting her and I said, I don't think we're going to be friends this semester. And she's like, why do you say that? And she's over here reassuring me that we are going to be friends. So for me to come back and for you to basically shun me, it was kind of weird. And it felt like, what did I do wrong? And I feel like with ambiguous loss, a lot of times the person thinks that, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily about what you did wrong. It's about the situation.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, I feel like ambiguous loss is like the core to grieving, you know, especially when you don't get closure on situations. I feel
in like those situations, right? Not like grieving in general, because if you know someone's sick, but in this case, correct.
And I just think that people don't realize how broad and how people don't really understand their emotions sometimes. And people are not really self-aware, and I guess it's not about being self-aware, but you don't know what to name it.
Right. Yeah, you don't know what to name it.
And it's just, sometimes it can be hard.
Yeah. You have the feeling, but you don't know what it's
right. You're like, why do I feel like this?
And that's what, you feel like that. And for me, I knew why I felt the way that I did. I know why I'm going through the ambiguous loss right now. But it's the initial part of having to, cut off people that are not serving you or that are toxic relationships. And then you cut it off and you do have that feeling of, dang, I'm like not talking to this person anymore. But oftentimes with those ambiguous losses, sometimes those things are good for you. Right. Sometimes you need to cut off those relationships because they're not good for you. Right. And once you get over the loss, you're good. Right. You're healthy, you're happy. Have you had any other experiences, you think? Not just like a friendship or anything else that you felt that was an ambiguous loss?
I would say my sister.
Okay.
With her condition, I love my sister. That's the thing. I love my sister so much, and I still love her to this day. But it's like with her condition, it's like tugging and pulling, and it's very emotionally draining. And I feel like whenever I had my relationship with my father, I feel like the way I cut him off was so cutthroat. But the way I give my sister chances on top of chances, it's like you can't keep giving you chances. Like I'm giving this man a lot less chances than I'm giving you. And we're still having this war of tugging and pulling. And it's like, I love you and I adore you so much. You're my big sister, but we can't keep going through this. And a lot of times when I see like posts on Instagram or on TikTok talking about me and my sister, me and my little sister hanging out, I feel that sense of loss. Like, I can't do that with my sister. It's not that she's not here, but me emotionally not connected anymore.
Right.
And it is tough, and it's like, it hurts, but once you go through it, you learn how to gain closure on your own. And then you don't necessarily need somebody to be like, this is why, this and this and this.
Oh, absolutely.
In order to, it's kind of like a little bit meditate. It's kind of like healing yourself, right? Like, because you don't need someone to be like, this is why I don't mess with you, this, and this. But not only you find that acceptance within yourself, and like, it happens, it's okay. People are pulled out of your life for a reason. Right. And to make peace with that on your own, it takes a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Absolutely.
What about you?
Absolutely. And I agree 1,000%. I feel like the initial process may be hard, but ultimately the end result, if it's a situation where it's a familial situation and it's the cutoff due to other things, if it's not a death or things like that, I think sometimes initially when you're in those processes, you may not really think about it or understand it or realize why. But once you get past that period, it's like, okay, that was probably better for me. I mean, I know my experience with ambiguous loss would say, not speaking to my mom. And it is what it is. It took me a long time to get here, a long time, years, but, and that's probably a whole nother video, but there's just things that happened in my childhood growing up that really should have happened.
Right.
I mean, as a kid, I should not have experienced the things that I experienced. And it's no essay or anything like that. I don't want to make it ambiguous to where people that were ambiguous or people think I was not. I'm not talking about, essay.
You're talking about other
but I'm talking about other forms of abuse, and it was allowed. And I realized how those instances and those things that I experienced shaped not only my life, how I raised my kids, relationships that I got into, all because of the traumas that I experienced and not knowing enough to work on that myself or fix myself. I'm going to say the catalyst was me starting to work on myself, and those things, helped me make that change. But the things that I experienced, I should have experienced, and I had to realize for myself that relationship, that she is still in that relationship, and therefore that is not good for me. And I can't do that because I really realized that I was the child, and I was put in positions and treated ways that I shouldn't have been, and nobody protected me. And you're still with this person. So for me, I can't because you're still with this person who treated me this way. So the loss for me was really cutting off my mom. And a lot of people, especially in the Black community, it's such a big deal. Like, you don't cut off family, and and I think all of that is rooted in our traumas that we've been through and our toxicity that we've been through. And it's just like, well, that's your parent. Okay, it is, but just because it's my parent doesn't mean that I have to subject myself to being treated a specific way or giving you a pass on the treatment that I experienced that you enabled, allowed, and really haven't done anything to reconcile, And so it was hard, but once I did it, it's so funny. Once I did make that connection, that cut off, it was like all these things that I had experienced as a kid, like more things came to the surface.
Right, because you're disassociating from those experiences at one point.
Right.
So once you start kind of clearing out your headspace and clearing out the space that person held in your mind and your heart, you start to, it's kind of like a puzzle piece.
Yeah.
You start piecing together like, wait, not only did this person do this to me, but they did this. And you did this.
Yes. And then it's like, it feels like almost like every day you're just like, oh my God, like this is another thing that I forgot this. And it's like, as a parent, I'm like, that is freaking crazy. Like, how the hell we let this happen? Like, this is crazy.
And the crazy thing is, not only as a parent, but as me, I would never allow that for any child. Like, any child I'm taking care of, that would have never slid for me, even as someone who's not a parent. So, sorry to talk.
No, you're good. So, like, so it's like, I'm just like, wow, and I do it makes me wonder, like, like with your sister, I definitely feel like I obviously made mistakes. I was a young mom. I didn't do everything the way that I should have done. But nope, I don't think any parent does. But, it's just like, if I wouldn't have maybe had so many damaged issues or so many traumas, would I have maybe seen some of the signs of some of the things that she's gone through earlier?
Yeah, and you agree with that a lot, I feel like.
I do. Because I don't think she understands that or she sees that, but I don't think that she realizes when I was like 19 when I got pregnant, had her at 20, her dad was, that's all I can say. And so he wasn't around. I was a single mom. I didn't have parental support. I was on my own at 18. My 18th birthday, I moved out and I hadn't even graduated from high school yet because I had to get out of that environment. And it was like a countdown. So I got out of that environment. So I was on my own. So, I'm a parent on my own, 20 years old. You're 21. I could not even imagine you being somebody's mom. I mean, and imagine you're 21. I was 21. I was someone's mom.
At 1 year old.
And they were 1 year old, And, so it was like, I was learning as I went. And, the world has gotten better and we've done more, I think, with understanding mental health, understanding toxic family dynamics, understanding abuse and what is abuse. You know, your generation, I feel like, is way more versed on things that are abusive than my generation was. We let things go. That's why the diddler is still, you know, it's just now getting its due.
Right.
Because there were things that we just saw, you know, things that we just kind of let things go. Older guys talking to young girls, things were just let go. So I definitely feel like as I've grown, as I've learned, excuse me, I have definitely changed the way that I approach things. And it gave me the ability to do things a little differently with you. But I, you know, excuse me, she may see that as I favored you. But that wasn't the case. I knew better. I was able to do better. And also, you're different kids.
Right. And we have two totally different personalities, really. Because she's the fun-loving person. She makes fun easy like that. Me, for myself, I'm not. Like, I'm very selective. I'm not, you know, I'm just very selective. Me and her are just two totally different personalities. Like, two totally different personalities. But.
And I feel like there's an ambiguous loss a little bit there with her, too, because we don't have the closest relationship. We don't talk like, you know, we should. She's my child and she knows. She knows. And I'm not even going to second guess that because I know that she knows I love her. And so, but there is that, we don't have that closeness.
It's crazy because I feel like sometimes with that situation, she makes it seem as if you're the most unempathetic person, but you're one of the most empathetic person.
Too empathetic sometimes.
Empathetic people.
Right.
And I feel like I've learned that sense from you.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, I feel like I'm an empathetic person. But I feel like she kind of makes you. And I don't think it's not fully understand just because of who she is,
right?
What she's going through. But I do know she loves us.
Yes,
we both love her, but it's just sometimes things just don't work out how you want them to be.
Right.
And sometimes you have to just make closure with that, and it's unfortunate until the other person is really willing to learn.
Right.
You know?
Right. The other person has to understand, you know, and I think that comes into it as well, you know, with not dealing with, you know, people in my life. It's like, if you don't understand why I feel the way that I do or why I'm where I'm at, then that's something you need to really look at because everybody else can see it. Everybody else understands. So if you don't understand, then that tells me that you're probably a little bit more damaged than you think you are.
Right. And I think that comes with not being able to make closure with yourself. I think that the thing with ambiguous loss, when that person is grieving, they make closure with themselves. The person on the other side, they don't necessarily make closure because they're like, what do I need to make closure for?
Yeah.
And it's just like, but you do because you're the key to this. You're
the reason I have the loss.
Right, you're the reason why I have lost. And you not being able to make closure from your own mistakes and what the only things you do is not going to allow us to evolve our relationship or to make our relationship even better, you know, or not even better, just improve our relationship. You have, as a person on the other side, you have to be willing to make closure with the things that you've done.
Right.
And take responsibility and accountability for things that you've done and why the other person may have cut you off and may be experiencing that ambiguous loss. But I think that sometimes people are conscious enough or self-aware enough of their own issues to have self-closure.
Oh, for sure. And to say, I did these things and I need to make amends for those things that I did. But the difference too is you're not making amends isn't just talking about it and moving on. It's talking about it and changing actions going forward. So that's where that comes in. You know, you can also have ambiguous loss with divorces. I've heard women say that they felt that when it's like their whole identity has been attached to being a wife and a mother, and then, you know, the kids go away, and then you know, sometimes when the kids go away, the parents say, "Oh, we don't really have any. We really realized we were just here for the kids, right?"
Right.
And then that sometimes men will just go off. Men have a tendency to just go off and they'll jump into something else. You know, they're right back in the dating pool. Whereas women will sometimes take time, and you have a lot of women who have gone through divorces.
Like recently? Or are you talking about
it just in general, right? Go through divorces and they've sensed that ambiguous loss because it's like, for women, a lot of times we get our identity tied up into our kids and our relationships, and we put everybody first, and then it's us. So because so much is tied up in those people, you forget yourself. And then when the kids are gone and your marriage is over, you're sitting here like, who am I? And is that sense of loss because that identity was tied to you being Mrs. Whoever or mom to whoever. And now it's like the kids are gone off living their lives. And yeah, of course you see them, but they're living their own lives. And you're not married anymore. And it's like, who am I? And so that sense of loss comes in because sometimes people feel like, I don't know who I am. I lost myself in those relationships. And therefore now when they're all gone, now I'm sitting here like as a divorced wife, I don't know who I am. I don't know myself. And there's that loss of what that relationship was. I think, parents of trans kids probably feel that too.
Right. That's a good example.
When your child is born as physically, female, we'll say, and then they transition, over to male. I always kind of praise the parents that are able to just adjust with their kids and just love their kid, because I feel like you support your kids, right? But I do understand that sense of loss when if you maybe like a mom, you had a daughter, right? And this is your little girl, even for the dad, and this is your little girl, and you have this idea of what her wedding's going to be like, and she's going to have kids, and you're going to be a grandma, and you and your daughter and your grandkids could all these great times. And if your daughter has a daughter, it's like, oh, and so parents, we have a tendency to have our kids, and we have all of these ideologies of what our kids are going to be. And then that child comes and says, I'm actually really a male, or vice versa. I'm actually a female. That's an ambiguous loss, because everything from that to that child's able to tell you. I know there's some kids that do it really young, and then there's others that wait later. But the longer they wait, I'm sure the loss is even greater, because if your kid is
right, you've known that kid for
18, 20, and they transition, you're just like, you've been Kimberly for 20 years, and now I've got to call you Kevin. It is an adjustment. Right. And so those parents, they do mourn that loss of who that child was, because you no longer can say, if you want to be respectful to your child and honor them, you can no longer say, I have a daughter. You now have to be like my son. So that person is gone. Mm-hmm. The person they used to be is gone. And a lot of times with the trans kids will say, I never really was that person. Inside I always feel different, but they couldn't relay it. But as a parent, that is who you saw, right, and where you came up with what you thought it was. And now that child is gone, and you have another child now, basically. So it is a very, very, it's a very broad, to me, subject and concept. And it's so many different ways that you can feel it. And the term was coined, I believe, in like the 70s, but it's something I don't feel like is talked about.
Do you feel like you experienced like ambiguous loss within a romantic relationship?
Yeah. I mean, and well, for me, you gentlemen, when I'm out of a relationship,
it's been happening.
I'm the type of person, when I'm done, I've been getting done.
Right. Slow things been happening.
But I will say this. No, I will say this though. I will say this. Like my last relationship, I did grieve, but I grieved while we were still in the same space.
Right.
So once we moved out of the space together, I was ready, and that grief was gone. But when the decision was made to separate, yeah, I grieved a lot. It was hard. And I mean, I don't know, you were home? I don't remember if you were home when we decided or not home when we first decided. I don't remember if you were home from school.
I don't know.
I don't remember. But I remember, like, I would just cry.
Then I wasn't home.
Or maybe you were at work or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, there would be moments when I would cry, because that was a 13-year relationship. And, we had our fights, we had our ups and downs, but that was a person that I did know, regardless of, obviously there was a lot of issues, but that was a person that I did know without a shadow of a doubt, no matter what was going on. If I called and said, I'm on the side of the road, that person would drop everything and come to me. Like, shadow of a doubt. Like, I know that, and that person,
well, deep down, he's a good
person. And that person did a lot of things that did make my life easier. I'll never ever dispute that. We just, grew apart, and there were other issues there. But I definitely, that relationship, I felt the loss I felt in that relationship, I would compare it to, it was probably one of my deepest ones. The only other time I kind of felt sad when a relationship ended like that was a relationship I had before you. I'm not going to say the person's name.
I know.
Your
but
dad.
But you feel like the other person still loved you, even with all the things that they were doing.
Oh, absolutely.
That person still,
absolutely,
like, genuinely loved you.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. Like, when you feel like, I know you love me, but
this ain't it.
And I love you too. I may love you too,
right.
But love is not enough to get us through this.
So I'll say with that other person, prior to you, which was well over 20 some odd years ago, that person, I knew that person loved and cared about me. So yeah, with that person, I did, and I hate to break it to you, your daddy, no, I didn't. Child, I was like, I remember I was at work, and this girl was like, you don't act like you're going through a divorce. And I was like, because I'm happy. What are you talking about? This is a celebration. I celebrate my divorcery every year. Yeah, I don't like sever party, but I mean, it's my divorcery, right? So that was like not sad. But this last relationship, yeah, it was, because it was I was with him longer than I was married.
Yeah.
And so it was like the culmination of our whole life together is about to be completely over.
Well, what you've known for
13 years.
Most
of your life.
Most of my life, but not only like a big chunk of your life. It's
doing
the whole 180.
And I do care about that person.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're going to be done. And I love that person. So it was like, oh my God, like this is ending. So when we were still in the same space, I would break out and cry. We were talking about when he want to talk about us, separating. I would start crying when we were talking about it. And it would make him feel, he would feel sad. But then it got to the point where I felt like, maybe boundaries aren't being respected. And then I stopped being so sad about it. And it was like, all right, this is what's best. Like, we have to do this. But initially, yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like a major loss, because I'm like, I loved his family. I loved him. I love his little cousin that I missed tremendously. I loved his family. I mean, I really did, and so it wasn't just a relationship with him. It was now the family dynamic, goes along with that. So it was, definitely. And I feel like people, like I say, just, we never know I don't think we really knew what to call it. I just don't feel like it's put out there enough. Right. Like, I happened to stumble upon this, just
hard to name it.
Something, I think I was watching a medical show, and so I mentioned it, of course, but it's probably studied in medicine. Obviously, well, not probably, we know it is, right? For therapists and the likes. And I was like, it was like this light bulb went off for me. I was just like, oh my God, that's what I've experienced. Yeah. And then I started looking it up and researching, and I was like, oh my God, this is what this is. And that's when I was like, we need to talk about this, because I don't think a lot of people understand, losing a job, like I said, or applying for jobs, over and over and over again. And you get this sense of, all right, I made it through these interviews, and then to get the rejection over and over and over again. It's that loss.
Yeah. I think that people experience it more than what we know.
Right.
And now that we can pinpoint a name on it, now we can learn how to heal from it.
Right.
What do you think some ways you've healed from ambiguous loss?
For me, I think obviously going to therapy has helped. Calling the thing a thing, like really calling out. When I say the biggest ambiguous loss for me obviously was my mom, because that's my mom. But I would say calling out what it is, reconciling with what it is, taking off the rose-colored glasses and really seeing, this is who she is and this is what she did. I think for years I've had moments where I hadn't talked to her before, but I always came back.
Right.
Because it's my mom, you know, she got sick, I came back. You know, I always came back and I never fully cut it off, even though I was hurting every time, because when she would complain about something that, you know, her husband did, I'm like, this man's been doing this stuff for 40 years.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue. It was kind of like she was trying to what is it called? Console in you when you're a victim of,
or confide in me.
Yeah. Sorry. She was trying to confide in you when you're a victim of, and that's very triggering, and that's very like,
right.
Because you can do something about it. She could do something about it, but you couldn't at that time. So that's very irritating when you're like, you really could do something about it instead of just complaining about it.
Right.
At that time, I couldn't. And you just talking about it is really irritating.
Well, you still complaining about it after 40 years and telling me and having me hear it, and you know, you want to complain to me about it, and I'm just like, fucking leave. And you don't have to play that. But I mean, it's like, what the hell? I don't want to hear this shit, you know? So I think for me, going to therapy and really calling everything, they realizing that she's dumping on me and I'm a victim. And then when I bring it up, it's kind of like, okay, I know, like, try to slough it off. And realizing that you also, realizing that in this situation, I wasn't enough. You didn't care about me enough. You didn't love me enough. You loved my brother enough to leave when he's over 30, because his situation, you left briefly for him, but you didn't love me enough as a child to leave for me. So actually, like, really reconciling with that has really helped me heal, because I'm like, take the rose-colored glasses off. This is what it was, and when you can face it, I think you start to heal from it, because you're not hiding from it anymore. And actually, when I started facing it and started realizing more of the things that were done, it really made me be like, girl, what are you doing? And it also made me realize where the traumas came in my relationships.
How they affected each part of your life.
Oh, absolutely. Or how I even moved and did things. You know, like, I would do things from traumas from my childhood because of the criticism I would receive for doing things in my relationships. And I will just say, even my last one, and then your father, that I know now, without a shadow of a doubt, neither one of those men, and I don't like your father, but you know, I will give him the credit. He never would have given me a problem about the thing that I did, knowing him as I know him. That wouldn't have been something that would have been an issue for him. That would have been something, an issue for my last. But I felt that I had to
explain,
over-explain, or, I don't want to do that because they might say something. And I'm a strong personality, so for me to even say that I would think like that.
But you're kind of conditioned.
Yes.
Like it became a habit.
Yes.
So that they start conditioning you based off the trauma.
At 6 years old, I was started being conditioned from trauma, and it really made me realize, like, in my relationships, like I say, I'm never going to say that it wasn't me in some of the instances. In both of those relationships, we both had issues, but I definitely can see where I don't feel like I was able to be my full and true self because of not doing certain things based on conditioning, based on not wanting to be ridiculed or criticized, when ultimately neither one of those men would have ever criticized me for the things that I'm talking about. And I'm talking about the conditioning is like things that are so minor, people would be like, are you serious? Knowing my strong personality. Okay, an example was, the other day I was taking a shower, and the shower fogged up. Did I tell you this? Okay. And the shower fogged up, and I was just being, silly, catchy, and I put a heart in the fog, right? If I would have done that in my last relationship with your dad, I would always wipe it off.
Really?
Yeah. Because I was doing ridiculed.
Yeah.
When I was just being
fun-loving.
And I know that neither your dad or my previous would have cared about that. They're not those kind of guys. Like, that kind of shit, they wouldn't have given two damns about. But I've been so criticized about things. Even journaling, I would hide. With my last, I started doing it more out in the open towards the end. But 13 years, I would hide with your dad. I would do it in a place, like in a room. If I was in my room by myself, I would do it. I was put it away and kind of hide it under stuff. Because when I would journal as a kid, he would come in my room and read my stuff. So I always felt that I'll never have a sense of privacy. So I would hide it so no one gets, so my relationships couldn't see those thoughts, because I've been ridiculed so much or exposed as a kid, and that's why when you would have a journal or a kid would have a journal, I would never read y'all stuff because I wanted to respect you because I didn't perceive that. So it affected me in all of those ways. It affected me in my need to always have to prove myself. And if I'm right, I'm going to freaking look it up and I'm going to show you that I'm right. And, my ex used to always say, you always got to be right. You always got to be right. And I would say, no, I don't. But I realize now I did feel this need to prove myself to him because I had to always prove myself growing up. I always had to prove that I wasn't lying or I wasn't this. Or, when I got straight A's, and I was told it's because your teachers liked you. That's the only reason you got it. Not that I was smart, even though anybody who knows me, and I'm not being braggadocious, would say that I'm a highly intelligent person.
But she is braggadocious.
I love it. But I'm pretty smart. And so, but he would say that I got straight A's in high school.
Well, it's not only that. Your dad's a smart person.
Absolutely.
Your biological father is a very smart person.
Right.
So it's like,
but it was a little belittle me, right?
Right.
So in my life, in my relationships, I'm gonna want to be right. So if I'm proving the point, I'm proving the point. Or if at work, if I got that email, you say something, I got that email from 2018 that told you that I didn't say, And so that's how I've worked on healing that, is that I don't have to prove myself. You're gonna believe what you want to believe. I'm gonna say what it is because ultimately you can scream from the rooftops if someone doesn't want to believe you, they're not going to. So I've let that go. That's how I worked on healing it, checking myself and being like, you know what? You say what it is, and they don't believe you. Oh well, at work I'll still prove myself because that's my dollars. But in relationship and in life, it is what it is. This is what it's going to be. I've done that to try to heal myself. The things that I would stop myself from doing for fear of ridicule. I'm like, girl, if you don't go do this, I'm making myself do those things. I'm talking about what happened to me. I'm reconciling with it, and I'm actively working to work on myself and heal my inner child and those things that affected me, so that I can go into my next, part of my life healed.
And I feel like you've recently started doing this, early 2022, 2023, but it's been a lot of growth, and I've seen it within myself that how far you came. Like you're a little bit less combative.
Thank you.
You guys, she's a Virgo rising, so Virgo risings are combative either way.
Anybody that knows me probably would say I'll pop off.
Right. But I just see the growth, and I see how you didn't allow those instances to affect your children. Now, or at least with me.
Yeah, right.
And I appreciate that because a lot of times parents like to put their trauma back on their child. But I think it also depends on who the child is.
Right.
But you didn't necessarily do that. Like you gave me a privacy to have a diary. Like you would give me diaries for Christmas. And I may not necessarily write stuff, but I would draw stuff.
Right.
But you wouldn't know what I would draw. You wouldn't know what I'd be drawing in there because you never invaded my privacy. You didn't feel like you had a right to my privacy.
Right.
And I feel like that has allowed me to be
never
strong.
took it off the hinges.
And that has allowed me to be strong, and that's allowed me to be able to set boundaries in other relationships, not just my romantic relationship, but my friendships.
Right.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you. I tried. I really wanted to make sure that I didn't have those things that I kind of strayed a little bit from Ambiguous Loss and got into other topics. But this is, I guess, is a part of it. I really tried hard, to make sure that what happened didn't happen to my kids.
Yeah.
Even in the instance of I wasn't going to ever let no man treat my kids try to work it out. And then, I'll never forget. I mean, that instance when he took you to go get ice cream and left your sister home, and then you were a little kid, you just licking your little ice cream in front of her, and the hurt that she felt when she called me. For me at that point, nah, sir, we would never get back together because you literally just slighted one of my kids, and it was, and my reaction was probably trauma related because those things that happened to me, not necessarily ice cream, but just being treated differently because I was the step or whatever. I always knew, and I will say this, and your sister probably doesn't know this, but when I was pregnant with your sister, I remember I was walking home. I was walking from the store, and I don't know why this came to my head, but I made a promise to her in my belly, and I said to her, I promise you, I will never ever, because I knew I wasn't gonna be with her father, right? We knew that at that point. I said, I will never ever let a man treat you the way that I was treated. I made that promise to her. She was in my belly. I knew then. I was like, I would never ever allow that for my kid. So when he did that, hang it up. Oh, absolutely. Because I made that promise at 19. I knew that I was never going to allow that, and I meant it. I was never going to allow it. And so when he did that to her, and then she called me, and that was what no. And so I appreciate you saying that. I thank you, because I really did try to do that. And now I'm just trying to work on myself to get my better, because I don't want this to come onto you, and then when you have kids, it comes onto your kids. I'm trying to break this thing down.
Right. Yeah, I feel like because obviously, I mean, I haven't experienced things to the depths of what you've experienced, but from my experience with ambiguous loss, on how I heal with it, a lot of things for me personally takes time.
Yeah.
And it takes just realizing that the issue is not you. Right? You're not the issue. These things didn't happen to you because you did them to yourself.
Right.
These things happen to you because that person felt like that's what they wanted to do at that point. You can't control what everybody does.
Right.
But you can make peace with that. I know I don't deserve it, and I didn't deserve it at that point. Right. And if that person chooses to treat me like that, I can't be around a person that does that. And why would I want to be around a person who does that?
Right.
I've never actually lost somebody. Well, not like somebody really close for me, but
your sister.
Well, not. I'm talking about like they're not here.
Oh, a death.
Like a death.
Oh, okay.
But I feel like with I don't want to say her name, but with the girl that went to elementary school with me.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I did experience ambiguous loss in that sense because I've known her for such a long time. I knew her when she was a little girl. Obviously, because I was a little girl too, and I still think about her to this day. And I feel like I still haven't had closure on what happened. Because I'm like, I wish I could have done something to help her.
Which you probably
couldn't have,
but that's
and I wasn't even that close to her at that point, you know. But for me, things just from what I've done, but someone who hasn't had trauma at the depths of you not seeing, you're just trauma, but like
no, I understand.
It just takes time, and it takes being conscious and knowing that you did your best in whatever relationship it was.
Right. But also, I understand that I probably got into those relationships due to my traumas.
Right. Exactly.
And so, and actually, it's I know that because if I look back on all the relationships I've had since 18, that I would consider like a real relationship. I can see patterns in every one of those relationships that mirrors my childhood.
Yeah.
And so I know that all those relationships, I was a trauma-filled, broken person, and I connected with people that had traumas and brokenness, and we just had a whole bunch of toxic trauma and brokenness together.
Right. I feel like a lot of people, especially a lot of men, they have mommy issues, and they don't know, and a lot of times they put that back on their women. Right. And I feel like you being a naturally nurturing person, sometimes it just is like a suck to you because you're naturally nurturing. Right. You're gift giving, and people may not experience that because that is your love language. Right. So it's just like it's like magnets.
I know, it's crazy.
And I feel like that too. Like sometimes I attract a lot of people with mommy issues, not just guys, but my girlfriends just too.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
Yeah, it's
I
weird.
think it's just the mothering aspect. Like, you have mothering, and when you're empathetic,
Yeah.
you know, when you can, when you listen to people and you understand,
Yeah.
it's like they can
It's
see
like
you
they can
out.
see it, right? Well, that's why I'm working on healing. Not that I don't want to be, because I will always just be who I am, but I want to be able to have up that guard, where when those red flags come, I'm not making excuses for them, because I do think my empathy, my motheriness, when I've seen those red flags, I was like, oh well, it'll be okay. We're in my head, you know, oh, I didn't like that, but it's okay. I like all these other things, and we'll just work on that.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm at now with my healing. Red flag? Nope. I'm sorry. I don't care what those other great things. I can't do the red flags.
And I think
just can't do it.
And I think a lot of women think that they have to work through things with their man, but
No.
you are not obligated to work through anything with anybody else's trauma.
Right.
You do not have to be like, oh, he has this issue, we can work on it. No, that's not your issue to work on. That's his issue to work on it. And if he's not willing to work on it, then know that he's not willing to evolve and become a better person for you, because that situation is still yet affecting you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what a lot of men think, that, oh, you love me, you should want to be with me. Yeah, but I love you, but you may have issues that you need to work on that I don't necessarily need to deal with.
Right.
I don't have to deal with your issues just because they don't just because they don't affect me in a sense.
Right.
But and they do affect me, because I'm in a relationship with you.
Right.
And if you're not willing to work on that, then you're not willing to evolve. You're not willing to stay with me long term, because I'm still evolving.
Right. So,
and you shouldn't have to deal with that. Like, women think that, oh, we can work on it. No, that's not your issue to fix, and you can't fix everything.
Right. And sometimes when you have trauma, that's what comes up. But when you go through the loss and then you work through it and you work through your stuff, you know, you get better. Because let's be honest, ambiguous loss, that trauma of losing someone, a death can forever change you if you don't work on it. You know, losing that job could forever change you. All of those things can bring you trauma and forever change you and affect your relationships. So I just think, like, the whole crux of it is ambiguous loss is real. It is something that you may be experiencing, and if you are, you know, there's resources out there that can help you. Talk to your therapist, talk to the counselor, talk to maybe a friend, your pastor, anyone that you feel that you can express it. Because I think if you express it and you can get it out and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is why I'm feeling it, you can start to heal from it. And then if you start to understand why you have the loss, whether it's the parental, you know, abuse situation where you can't be with them, or if it's a situation where you were put in foster care, you know, or, you know, which I can't speak to, but, you know, I would say if that's the situation, try to look, you know, from the perspective of, I'm sure your parent maybe was going through something, you know, and they had the trauma, and, you know, just, I guess, try to look at it from a perspective. It wasn't anything you did, and you may not get closure on it, but the first step to kind of healing it is maybe talking to somebody and working through it, recognizing it, and trying to kind of see what's making me have that feeling about this loss, and how can I have closure within myself, because you're not going to always get closure with people, but it's about within yourself, reconciling with what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and then working on kind of healing that part of you.
Right. And I think
you be better.
And I think that first step is the biggest step.
Talking to someone
and learning how to heal on yourself, is a lot. Things take time, and usually with things like that, when you're not giving the closure and you're not giving the direct answer, it takes time. So as long as you're willing to do the work, just start by talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Someone that you actually trust. I mean, it can go a long way, and that's the first step to recognizing it. Right. And being self-aware and understanding why you feel that way, like I said. But other than that, things take time, and dealing from something of such does take time. It's not going to happen.
Right. So give yourself grace, and, you know, just do the best that you can. And, you know, we all know, we know it's hard. Do what's right for you. And if that means cutting off someone, then so be it. Do what is best for you and your mental health and your emotional well-being. Good one. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.